Okay, here we are. Welcome everyone to Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. We are continuing learning from Keter Shem Tov, the compilation of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. And we're going to start on Kuf Daled. For those who have the book, the Sefer, Kuf Daled, and then we're going to go back. But I want to start it with this because it's connected to the Parshat Shavua. We're starting a new book, the book of Shemot. And the Baal Shem has a short what to say about that. So he says like this. He quotes from the beginning of the book, Elo Shemot B'nai Yisrael. These are the names of the children of Israel who are literally in the present, who are coming to Egypt. And then it names all the tribes. And then it continues. And everyone asks, why is the entire book named Shemot? In English, it's called Exodus, because that's the theme. The major theme, at least of the beginning of the book, is about the exodus of Israel from Egypt. But in Hebrew, Shemot means names. So everyone asks, what's the significance of the names? So the Baal Shem Tov says, K'moshe tfisat haguf hu begashmi she'oto gufo, kach tfisat haneshama hu al yedei kriyat shemo. Gam b'yashan ni'er mishenato b'mikre shemo, b'koreh shemo. So look what the Baal Shem says. He says, just like the body of a human being is connected, is essentially rooted in the physical world, so too the neshama, the soul, is connected to what its name is. Also, when a person is asleep, he wakes up from his sleep when you call his name. That's what the Baal Shem Tov says. He's not really addressing what I started with. Why is the whole book called Shemot? Actually, for those who have Orchard of Delight, I actually wrote a whole article of why the whole book is called Shemot. But here, the Baal Shem Tov is focusing in on the meaning of a name. So here he says, just like the body is connected to the physical, the soul, so we'll say, is connected to the spiritual. But here he says the soul is connected to its name. That tells us the importance of a person's name. And then he says, and this is connected to a tradition handed down from what the Baal Shem said about himself, where he says, if someone is asleep, how can you wake him up? You call his name. And we've all done this many times. When we want to wake up one of our children, our spouse, whatever, usually we call their name and they respond. So the Baal Shem Tov, that's why I wanted to start with this, because this is very connected to the new book we're learning. But the Baal Shem said about himself, we have to remember that his given name is Yisrael. It's Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov is just a name that he was given, the master of the good name. But his given name, his real name is Yisrael. And so the Baal Shem said, I came into this world to wake up Am Yisrael. And because my name is Yisrael, they will wake up through my teachings. That's what I came in this world to do, is to wake up Israel from its slumber. And if you remember, going back to our first class where we started with the whole story of the life of the Baal Shem Tov, we see that he was born into an incredibly depressed state of consciousness of Am Yisrael because of the terrible oppression, the exile, just nonstop, the oppression, the pressure, the poverty. It had taken its toll. The Jewish people were just barely hanging on. And the Baal Shem Tov came and he woke everyone up. He gave everyone hope. He gave joy. He gave a reason to hold on. So that's very, very beautiful what he's saying here. But deeper, what he's saying is, just like the body is connected to the physical, the neshama is connected to its name. So here we see there's a tradition that when a parent names their child, they have a little bit of prophecy. There's a little bit of prophecy when parents are trying to think of the name of their child, that many times a name is chosen before, but a lot of times parents wait to the actual birth to catch the energy. Like, let's say a child is born on a holiday, is born on a Shabbat. Then there's a deep connection between the soul coming into the world on that particular holiday. And the parents will pick a name because that's like the energy that this baby has come into the world. Other times, parents choose a name before, also from a little bit of prophecy of who they feel this child is going to be. Now, obviously, in most cases, you don't know if it's going to be a boy or a girl. So it's sometimes people choose. If it's a boy, we'll call him this. If it's a girl, we'll call him that. But it's a beautiful teaching that the Baal Shem said about himself. What he felt his function, his mission in the world was to wake up the Jewish people, to wake them up through calling by his name, Yisrael. So, of course, this could lead us into a much deeper understanding of the function of a name, because we know that a word is made up of the Hebrew letters that comprise it, and that a word is not just a symbol of an object, it is the animating reality of that subject. This is one of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov that we haven't gotten to, is that when we say that God creates the world through speech, and we also have the tradition that God is recreating the world at every minute through speech. So when it says, God said, let there be light, and there was light, so light comes into the world, that the word for light, or, is what light is. The word for darkness is what darkness is. It's not a symbol of, it's the actual essence of it. So the same thing with a person. When a person's Hebrew name is the essence of who they are, what their mission and purpose in the world is connected to a person's name. And I'll just say this, that one of the explanations, why is the whole book named Shemot? It's connected to a midrash that on the merit of three things, Israel was able to maintain a certain level of independence in Egypt, their identity, that they kept their same names. They had a distinct type of clothing. And well, it escapes you right now. What the third thing is, someone put it in the chat. Language, of course, their language. They continue to speak Hebrew. So here we see the importance of it's not a small thing that the book begins. These are the names of the children of Israel who are coming to Egypt. Because the fact that they held on to their names means they held on to their identity. And so therefore, without that, they would have been lost in Egypt. They would have assimilated. They would have given up. But the fact that they maintained their names allowed them to, or gave them the merit to maintain their identity. Okay, now we go back to Tzadi Aleph, 91. And this is a whole different subject. So it says like this, that the person writing this, like most of these start, I heard this from my teacher, meaning the Baal Shem Tov. Perusha pasuk, kol asher timsa yedecha la'asot, v'kochacha oseh. It says, everything that you find to do with your hands, do it with your full strength. It's a pasuk from Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, the 9th chapter, the 10th verse. And where it says, all that you find for your hand to do, meaning every action that you take, do it with your full strength. So now the Baal Shem Tov is going to explain his interpretation of this. Ki inyan Chanoch mem tet tet shehaya miyached kut shebrichu ushchinte al kol tefirahu. So here he brings in Chanoch, the biblical figure who he was considered a great tzaddik. He's even before Noach. He's in the first 10 generations. And it says that he lived to the age of 365. And God took him. Very unique type of language. That God took him at age 365. So Rashi comments, what does it mean God took him? So Rashi says that he was a great tzaddik, but however we understand this, God saw there was a place that he might fall from his righteousness. And so he took him when he was still in a state of being righteous. And according to tradition, he was transformed into an angel. Not just any angel. Here, usually the 3 letters are used, mem, tet, tet. And it stands for Metatron, who becomes one of the main angels in heaven. And one of his tasks, we might even see a connection to one of the Torahs later, was he writes the merits of Israel in the upper worlds. That he is the one who identifies, gathers up all of the merits of Israel, and he's like a scribe, and he enters them into the books above. So the Baal Shem continues. So there's a tradition about Chanoch And it says that he was a sandler. He made shoes. And the tradition is that, and this is what the Baal Shem says, that he would unify the Holy One, blessed be he, and the Shekhinah with every stitch that he sewed. In other words, he appeared to be a simple person. This is maybe one of the sources for the idea of 36 hidden tzaddikim. He was a sandler. He seemed like he was just making shoes. But the tradition was that every shoe he was making, every stitch, he was unifying the holy name of God with the Shekhinah. So the Baal Shem continues, and he says, "The machshava nikra ein sof havaya," that in, let's call it the bigger picture, a person's thoughts are connected to infinity and are connected to the four-letter name of God, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Umaseh, who the name Adonai, Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud. So this is a very important thing that the Baal Shem Tov is saying here. Like he's kind of jumping from place to place, but there's a string connecting it. Let's go back. We go from the verse that says, all of your actions that you do them with your full koach. So the Baal Shem wants to explain that, but he takes an example from Hanoch. Here, Hanoch, his actions are stitching shoes, but he's doing it with his full koach. And here what the Baal Shem Tov says, one's actions, this is symbolized by the name Aleph and Daled and Nun and Yud. One's thoughts are represented by the four-letter name Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Now we know that every time that we say the four-letter name of God, we don't say it the way it's written. We say it, the name was called Adni, Aleph and Daled and Nun and Yud. So the Baal Shem is saying that this in itself is a tremendous unification. And so what he's saying is that Hanoch is doing actions literally with his hand, but with his thoughts, he's unifying all the worlds. He's unifying spiritual and physical, the body and the neshama, thought and action. That's what the Baal Shem is saying. But the important thing is every time we say God's name, the Baal Shem Tov is saying that the name, the way we're pronouncing it is the action. But you have to have the thought behind it. That's the Yud Ke Vav Ke. How many times do we say a blessing and we just absolutely don't think of anything when we say God's name? We just rattle it off. But the Baal Shem is saying that saying this name is the secret of unifying action with thought. And we all know that we could do many actions without any thought behind it. But when we unify, and we could say the same thing about prayer, we can rattle off the prayers without any real intention. We're just saying the words, that's what's written, without any thought. So the Baal Shem Tov is trying to teach us that every action, even stitching up a shoe, it has the possibility of deep thought to the point of unifying the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Shekhinah. This is an awesome teaching. This takes us out of the realm of the mundane. Everything in the mundane can be turned into holy through our thoughts. Every action that we take in potential can take on tremendous meaning and intent. The Baal Shem continues, וכאשר מחבר המעשה עם המחשבה בעת עשיית המעשה, נקרא ייחוד קודשא בריך הוא שכינתה. So he says, there's a little bit of a repetition. So he says, from this we learn that any time that we connect our actions to our thoughts, we are in essence unifying the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Shekhinah. וזה שכתוב, כל אשר תמצא ידך לעשות בכוחך עשה. So now he's going back to our original verse. Everything that a person finds their hand in doing, meaning in every action that a person takes, לעשות בכוחך עשה. But now he's going to emphasize, what does it mean with all your strength? He's now going to explain what that means. רוצה לומר, כי המחשבה נקרא חוכמה. Because a person's thoughts are called wisdom, chachma. If you look at the word chachma, it's you can permute the letters to be koach ma. Here koach means strength, just like in the verse. You should do everything bekochacha, bekoach shalcha. So chachma has the word koach in it. And ma, usually we translate as it meaning what. But ma is the root of the word mahut, which means essence. To get to the essence of something. So the Baal Shem is saying, when the verse says, everything that you find yourself doing, do it with all your strength, he's saying what it's really saying is, make sure to do it with your wisdom, with your thought. Because the words for chachma is the word for strength. Do it with all your strength means do it with all of your wisdom. And then your action will be with full strength. Because if there's no thought connected to it, we can't honestly say it's with your whole strength. We're doing the action without any thought. But when it's combined with thought, then the action fulfills its full potential. Shehu hamachshava lechaber shnehem. And that's how thought connects physical and spiritual, mundane and holy, God and man. Everything is unified when we act with kavanah. Now, this might sound obvious, but as I've mentioned already, we all know all too well how much of our lives we're doing without proper thought. We know that there's so many teachings about how to eat in a holy way, but how many of us actually do it? And it takes thought, it takes intent. So, but this is true across the board. Everything that we're doing needs thought. And again, the Baal Shem says the thought is your strength. That's what gives your action strength, is if you do it with your full intent. So this is just a beautiful, beautiful wake-up call. I'm going to connect the first Torah we learned, that the Baal Shem came to wake us up. And so he's coming to wake us up that everything that you do, you can make meaningful. You can make full of intent, of unification. We have no concept of how we can move the world through our thoughts. So speaking of that, the next one we're doing is Sadi Gimel Aleph. And here he's actually going to explain even on a deeper way. So he says like this, Kishayesh Rasha'im Be'ir. If there is a city that has evil people in it, O Medina Hamit Nahagin B'Sheker, or you have a whole country that is operating through lies and falsehood. V'yesh b'neihem tzaddik, but in that city or in that country, there's a righteous person. Hamit naheg be'emet, who acts with truth. Ka'asher osek b'torah u'b'tefillah, meaning through his Torah and his prayer, he is connected to truth. Umidabek et atzmo el emet, and because he acts in truth, his whole being is connected to truth. As now he's quoting a verse that is the Psalm 92 for Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, where it says, "Az yitpardu kol po'alei oven." Then all actors of evil, they will be done with. They will be defeated. Uv'sheker and sheker, all of it will be eliminated. So what does that mean? What is he trying to say here? So we could connect it to the first thing that we just learned, where here you have either a city or a country that is not operating according to the truth and have evil people in it. But you have righteous people. And so what he's saying here is that through those righteous people being righteous, that it has the power to destroy the evil. This is and it's going back to what he was saying about thought. Because here it doesn't say the person is doing anything to get rid of these evil people, or he may be, or this country that is operating according to falsehood. But it's saying by this person attaching themselves to truth and living according to the truth, that in the ultimate sense, at least in potential, it can defeat and overwhelm the evil in that city or that country. If you remember, last week or the week before, I don't remember, we learned this cardinal teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, that we should pray that our enemies do tshuva. This is talking about personal enemies. And when we say enemies, it can span from someone who is trying to kill you, or someone who is just giving you a hard time. Well, we're using the word enemy in the broadest sense. But it could also mean like the war we're involved with right now, real enemies who are really trying to kill you. And he said that we should pray that they do tshuva. I don't want to go back into the whole Torah, but he says that if there is a spark of goodness in them, so by praying that they do tshuva, maybe it will help. And we brought a number of cases where it showed examples of it helps. We brought an example from the Talmud with Rabbi Meir and Bruria, where by just praying that people who are terribly bothering you do tshuva, that it worked. But remember, the Baal Shem Tov said it's almost paradoxical. If this enemy does not have any good in them, your prayer that they do tshuva will destroy them. It's a bit paradoxical. Because we do want the whole world to do tshuva. We do. We want everyone to live in peace. We want Mashiach to come. But at the same time, we want to get rid of our enemies. So here the Baal Shem was teaching us a somewhat paradoxical teaching that by praying that they do tshuva, it might actually happen. But if they're not on the level, then they will be destroyed. And that's what the Baal Shem is saying here. That someone who lives according to truth may just have the power to either get them to do tshuva or to wipe them out. In a certain way, this is a connection to that previous Torah. Okay, now we're going to Tzadi Gimel Daled. Okay, he begins by taking a verse from the whole episode with Yaakov and his dream of the ladder. And it begins, Achein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. When Yaakov woke up from his dream, he said, he was like startled, he was amazed, and he said that God is in this place and I didn't know. I didn't realize that God was in this place. So the Baal Shem Tov begins this Torah with that statement. Rotzeh lamar, that is to say, b'makom zeh shel gidudei chayot ra'ot v'listim yesh sham shemo yitbarach. So here, first I'll explain the background. If you remember, when Yaakov came to the place where he dreamt, it says that he took stones and put them around his head. When Rashi says, why did Yaakov do this? Because he was fearful of wild animals. That's what he said. Now, we can ask a very practical question. If there is a wild animal, like a wild boar, a wild lion, Israel used to be full of wild lions, what would a circle of stones around a person's head do to help them at a practical level? So some people interpret that the wild animals were inside his consciousness. He is, without going into the whole thing, he's escaping from Esav, who wants to kill him. He's been sent after being home his whole life to go get married. He's on his own. According to the Midrash, he's been robbed and he doesn't have a penny to his name. And then he lies down to go to sleep. So some interpret this idea that he put stones around his head to protect himself from wild animals is really just his own inner turmoil and fears. So here's what the Baal Shem says. He says, that is to say that in a place that has like armies of wild animals and robbers and the sort, there you will find God's name. Because remember, he started with and he saw that God was in this place. Well, that place he originally thought was a very scary place. And so so the Baal Shem says, even in a place of armies of wild animals, there you will find God's name. Umamela gam b'kol machshavot zarot v'ra'ot shehem gududei chayot v'listim v'klipot yesham gam kein nitzutzei kedusha shel hashechina sheyarda sham al yedei hashvira. So he says like this. He says, because not only if you find yourself in a place of physical danger, robbers, thieves, wild animals, he says, but also your thoughts, your strange thoughts, your thoughts fueled by physical desires, your fantasies, whatever. He says those are like wild animals and robbers and the klipot, the shells of unholiness. He says, Yesham gam kain nitzotzei kedusha. Also there are sparks of holiness, of the Shekhinah, who have fallen there from shvirat kelim, from the breaking of the vessels. So in other words, what he's saying, and one of the Psalms from David HaMelech is, if I elevate myself to the highest heaven, there you are. And if I descend into the lowest hell, there you are also. So the Baal Shem is really just, this is not like a chiddush on his part. He's saying, that's what Yaakov was saying. I didn't know that God was in this place. So the Baal Shem is saying, really what he's saying is God is everywhere, even in what we think is the negative, in the place of unholiness, of the klipot. There are sparks of godliness as well. V'yir'eh v'yomar mar norah. So Yaakov, after the verse that we're talking about, that God was in this place that I didn't know, it says that he became very fearful, and he said, Ma norah hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. Rotzeh lamar, that is to say, shenifla alav yirav rada, shetzier al atzmo b'tzara shechina v'yiridita bein klipot kol kach. So why when you say norah, ma norah is connected to what's called yirat Hashem, the fear of God, which means the awe of God. But the Baal Shem is saying, like, what realization did he have at that moment? When he saw how lowly sparks of godliness had fallen, he in a certain way felt compassion for the Shekhinah and compassion for God, that God's holiness has to fall so far into this world. Is this really what God wanted from his world? And this is where we have to look at our actions that have turned Gan Eden, a Garden of Eden, into the world that we have now. Remember, when God put Adam and Chava into Gan Eden, it was a paradise. And so Yaakov at that moment not only understood, but he felt this connection to the Shekhinah, and felt truly bad, truly upset that this is the state of the world. And through this kind of compassion, as it were, for the Shekhinah, one can make a unification between Yira and Norah, between the awe and fear of God and the awesomeness of God. Benit pardu haklipot, and that is how we can get rid of the klipot. That, in other words, what he's saying is that's how we can redeem these sparks of holiness, by connecting deeply to them and lifting them up out of this place of lowness. Now, the reason that this is so important is because this is a very, very important part of Hasidic consciousness of prayer. The Baal Shem Tov taught, and Rebbe's after him that when we pray, especially the Amida, we should always have in mind the idea of lifting up the Shekhinah from the as we'll call it, the fallen place that the Shekhinah has fallen to. And that that should be our essential prayer more than for ourselves. And truthfully, that's not so easy to do, because when we pray the Amida, most of the requests are personal requests, though truthfully, many of them are what we call communal, that Jerusalem should be rebuilt, that Tzemach David should come, Mashiach should come, that we should renew our judges as of old, that we should get rid of our enemies. But also, we all know that when we daven the Shemona Esrei, many of us, this is, and rightfully so, this is a time to pray for what we need. But what the Baal Shem Tov is saying here, and I'm sure there are many other Torahs in Keter Shem Tov that will get to this. I'm just putting in here this idea connected to prayer. And we should always have in mind the lifting up of the Shekhinah. And this reminds me of a teaching of Rav Ginsburg. I've said this before. He said that we should have compassion on 3 levels. We should have compassion on every human being, because for a soul to come from its heavenly abode into a material, physical, flawed world full of trials and tribulations, every human being deserves compassion. That's the existential nature of a person in this world. The second level of compassion is we should have compassion on every Jew because of our history, because of what everything we've gone through. And truthfully, this last 15 months has given us plenty of opportunity to practice this. Every time you go to the news and you hear of another soldier killed, another civilian killed in a terrorist attack, because it's been nonstop for 15 months, nonstop. Like, it's not hard that our heart is just constantly feeling for not only obviously the people who have been killed, but their families and their communities. And so that's an obvious thing. But now the third thing Rav Ginsburg said is that everyone should have compassion on God. Because when we think of this is God's vision for the world that he created. This is what God had in mind for humanity. In his love for humanity, he gave us one of his greatest gifts, free will. And God allows free will to operate. But look what we've done to the world. And so we should have compassion on God. That's what the Baal Shem is saying here. That's what he's saying. That was Yaakov's realization when he said, Ma norah hamakom hazeh. Because he realized it wasn't just that he thought that maybe there were wild animals around, and there was klipa around, and robbers. And remember, he had just been robbed of all of his money. So he in the physical world, he was experiencing these wild animals. But here, the Baal Shem says, but those wild animals were also within him. But they're also, even in our not holy thoughts, there will be a spark of godliness that needs to be redeemed, needs to be fixed. Now, this we learned weeks ago, this idea of what do you do when you get strange thoughts during your prayer. And the Baal Shem Tov gave us a formula. If at the moment you're having these strange thoughts, it occurs to you how you can fix it. In other words, the Baal Shem Tov is saying that's a spark of holiness that is coming to you to be redeemed. And even though it appears to us like, oh, why am I thinking this horrible thing when I'm in the middle of my davening? But if you can catch right then, like this thought is needing a fixing. And the Baal Shem says you can do a tremendous inner fixing at that moment by rectifying that thought. But the Baal Shem also said, but if it doesn't come to you and this thought is just bothering you, then basically kill it. Get rid of it, push it to the side, get out of here. I'm not interested. I'm davening now. Go away. Chutzpah. So here, it could go either way. But the point is, this is what the Baal Shem is saying. Just like David HaMelech said, if I go to the highest heaven, there you are. And if I go to the lowest hell, you are there also. But this is within each person's consciousness, each person's real experiences. And so the Baal Shem, in many, many, many different ways, is trying to teach us that, see, if we didn't have the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, anytime a bad thought came to us, a bad midah, meaning like anger, jealousy, hatred, egotistic ideas, power grabs, whatever, we could just say, just get rid of them. They're bad, push them away. And sometimes that is true. But the Baal Shem is saying, notice what's happening here. You could actually fix this. You can fix it. It's giving you a sign. I need to be fixed. Fix me. But it's very subtle to know when you can and when you can't, when you should push these thoughts to the side. But it's also in our daily life. Sometimes, and it's not even sometimes, many times, and we find ourselves in uncomfortable situations. I'll put it that way. Situations that are tense, are stressful, are not completely in our control. There's untruths there. There's deep impurity, unholiness. And so then again, in one sense, is like, I'm out of here. This is not for me. On the other hand, if we give up too soon, many, many opportunities of tikkun are lost. Because if we judge everything by our first reaction, this is uncomfortable, I can't deal with it. Well, between people, that would be a disaster. No one would be able to have a real relationship because relationships are not perfect. Of course, there's uncomfortable situations. There's situations that need to be talked out, that need to be fixed, that need to be corrected. So if we run at the first instance of challenge, like, how are we going to relate to anyone or the world? So the Baal Shem is trying to say, even in those places, make sure to look. There's some holiness there. There's some spark that needs to be redeemed. And we can only do our best. Sometimes, absolutely, the best thing is I'm out of here. Sometimes that is something that has to be done. This is not a situation I can fix right now. The longer I'm involved in this, the more I'm getting trapped. I'm out of here. But at the same time, there's always a possibility of fixing a place and not to run so quickly. So what I'm saying is like some of the deepest secrets of real life is how do you know the difference? That we can only pray to have inspiration, to know the right thing to do at the right time. And that's what the Baal Shem was saying. When these strange thoughts come to you in prayer, it could be that this is the greatest opportunity to fix yourself. On the other hand, it could just be what we call the other side. The Yetzer Hara is just coming to, knock us off. And our only defense is just pushing it away. Right now, I can't deal with you right now. I need to finish davening in a holy way. To know the difference, pray for inspiration, for clarity, for God's help, to know when and how to fix our lives. I bless all of us with that kind of inspiration, and may it come quickly to all of us. Wow. Before I start recording again, I just have to say, I said this, I think, even last week. No matter how much I prepare these classes, until I actually give it over, I have no idea how deep it is. I think I'm preparing. I choose because I'm not choosing every Torah here. Some of these Torahs, truthfully, I just don't understand. I absolutely don't understand. Others I don't think are necessarily appropriate. Others are too long. So I picked the ones that I think have real meat on them. But it amazes me the process of teaching that I'm like learning it for the first time after all this preparation by giving it over. So that's how I felt about the class tonight. Just the process of giving it over. Thank you, Susan. Okay. Let me just drink something first. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה b'dvaro. Okay, I'm recording again. Oh, 2 people are in the waiting room. Okay. No, middle. Okay, did everyone get in? Hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay. Okay. Oh no, I didn't unmute everyone. I'm sorry. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Okay, everyone's unmuted. I'm looking at the chats. So Dara, thank you very much for asking. She says, since you mentioned daughters, I mentioned my daughter in Philadelphia. but Dara wants to know if my other daughter, Davari, who's in California, is out of harm's way. Yes, she's up in Santa Cruz, like 5 hours north of California. In fact, though last year Santa Cruz was surrounded by fires, and some of her friends lost homes. The situation in California is, well, we're talking about having compassion, especially for us in the Moshav, who had a fire just 5.5 years ago that destroyed most of the Moshav. So not simple at all. Okay, Bracha says, and Bracha is in central California, and she says the valley and Palisades and parts of Malibu have been hit. Wait 1 second. Had fires last night. May all be kept out of harm's way. God willing.
It was really, really like, I mean, like you start paying attention when when you open the window and you start smelling smoke, and then you're like,
Yeah.
okay, then you have to go, call this number, call that number. But I flew in a couple of nights ago. I was in Florida, and basically when we were flying, you could actually see from the plane, you could see the areas, like the different areas burning. You could see the red, and
oh my gosh.
and when you came out of the airport, you were like, is someone smoking? And they're like, no.
Oh my gosh.
How
far away are you from Los Angeles?
So about an hour and 20 minutes by car, which is good.
Yeah. But I know from Denver, because when there are fires in the Rocky Mountains, Denver is covered with smoke.
Yeah.
Sometimes for weeks at a time.
Right, because the valleys keep it in.
It
depends. It depends on the valleys, and it depends where you are. But may I ask my question while I'm on about the klipa and the klipa noga and stuff like that? Am I preempting?
Okay. No.
Do you want me to ask it later? Okay. So, so you were speaking about tshuva, and I was, I was just studying the Tanya yesterday, and that very Tanya is about klipa and klipa noga and the admixture, the evil together with the good, as it were. And if there's a situation where one can extricate the good, fine. But let's say in a case, I don't even like to say his name, Imak Shemo, but like Sinwar, Imak Shemo, that was helped by a Jewish person who saved his life, who operated on him. And this was his thanks, of course. But the question is, you see, this is where it always is confusing for me, because the Rebbe also states, and I think it's from the Alter Rebbe on, is that evil has to be eradicated at its source. That there's not that, what do you call it, the admixture, there's not the klipa and the noga sometimes together, or the noga, that spark can be extricated. And therefore, let's say that form, that klipa, that real bad, the pure old, good old evil, bad old evil, has to be totally extricated, totally eliminated, erased at its source.
Right. That's what we were saying, is that you have to have real clarity and inspiration, because sometimes you have to just get rid of it. And other times you can uplift it or redeem it. But to know the difference is not so simple, obviously.
That's the problem. Like, these doctors, these good Jewish doctors, they see a life, and they, like like in a case like that, it's like, and you think, why did Hashem let this man live? I mean, that's obviously the next question, right? Why
The
did,
doctor,
why?
the doctor did the right thing at the time. The bigger question is, why did God allow such a
Why
thing?
did God
Yeah,
allow him to live? I know that's what the woman said. There was
yeah,
an article, and
yeah,
at the end of the article, there was I think an Israeli woman, American woman, whatever, and he sees the doctor walking down the street, and she looks at him, and she said, "Why? Why did you let him live? Why didn't you just let things take their
yeah,
normal course?" So yeah, I guess these are
yeah,
the questions. I think I have to wait for Mashiach.
yeah, for sure.
These are the tough ones.
Even Dafka, the tough ones.
Yeah.
Dafka.
Yeah, so
Okay.
thank you. Thank you. And God willing,
Okay.
everybody should be safe if you're here
Amen.
in
Amen.
California. Keep
Amen.
checking. You got to keep checking you really have to check, keep checking and updating. So
Right.
don't be surprised.
Right. There are a lot of funds. We just contributed to Chabad of Los Angeles because they're providing, food and clothes and
Yeah, thank
shelter.
you.
So
Thanks
there's,
for reminding me.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah, no,
lots of
it's
funds. Yeah.
just beyond.
Even though,
Palisades
even though
totally.
we're reading about, many, you know, super rich people who have lost their mansions.
Yeah.
But in a case like this, like everyone deserves compassion, right? But not everyone who's losing their homes is rich. And
Right.
not every insurance company is gonna come through.
No, they
So
pulled out. The
there's a
insurance
lot of
companies,
need. There are a lot
they
of
pull,
people who will be
yeah,
needing a lot of things in
yeah.
the immediate future and into the farther future. Bezrat Hashem, everyone will be
Results.
taken care of. Okay, Nachum says some thoughts about Shem. Shem is meaning the word Shem. Shem is made of Shin, fire, and Mem, water. It is connected to Sham, there. What is there? What is there? And Shemayim, heaven, and also to Neshama, spirit. Yes, very good. Looking at the word Shem or Sham, is made up of Shin Mem, fire and water, opposites. Yeah. Nachum, you want to add anything?
Actually, Brenda makes some good points later on about this. She elaborates on it much better.
Okay, we'll get to it, God willing. Bli Netter. Toby says, I thought Metatron was the angel at the top who ran everything for Hashem and therefore must have been around from the beginning. How then could he only come into being with the passing of Hanoch? I don't really have an answer for you, Toby, other than the tradition that Hanoch became Metatron. So I can't really answer that. I don't know if I've ever seen that this angel was there from the very beginning of creation. I don't, unless you know an absolute source for that. But there's this tradition that Hanoch became this angel. So I can't answer more than that.
Isn't that also a step down? Because human beings are higher than angels.
I hear your comment also. Well, put it this way: if a human being is not doing the will of God, listen, David HaMelech said, I am worse than a worm. What do we learn from that? In other words, a human being, when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, yes, we're told they're higher than angels. But at the same time, we're told that if a human being isn't using their free will correctly, isn't doing good things, isn't doing moral and ethical things, they're worse than an animal. Because an animal does exactly what it's supposed to do. An angel does exactly what it's supposed to do. If a human being is not doing what it's supposed to do, then in that sense, it's not higher than an angel. In potential, in most, we learn that it is. So that's my answer.
Thank you.
Toby says on the word ma, if it means essence, then when Moshe says to Hashem, "V'anachnu ma," could it actually have been reminding Hashem as if that is necessary, that we are part of your essence? Yes, absolutely. According to Chassidut, that would be a very, very good explanation. But actually, Moshe was directing that statement to the people, "V'nachnu ma." So I would take the same thing that you're saying and saying that on a deeper level, what he was saying is, we are nothing. We're part of God's essence. We're doing God's will. So why are you coming against us? You're actually coming against God. So what you're saying is actually really what they were saying in a certain way. Is v'nachnu ma, we're doing God's will here. So if you're against us, that means you're against God. I think that's just actually almost the pshat of what they're telling the people. Okay, Bracha says, this topic of tshuva when speaking of evil is very confusing sometimes. Thought that the idea was first to eradicate all evil at its source, and then to elevate. When the klipa is so strong, and I have to make this bigger, 1 second. Hold on. There we go. When the klipa is so strong and the other redeeming qualities are nullified, isn't it time to cut bait? And they say, as they say in the Northeast. So this goes back to the verse that we've talked to many times, and we learned from the Baal Shem Tov. Sur mirav v'yaseh tov, b'kei shalom v'radfehu. Turn away from evil and do good, and pursue peace. And so the simple is, first you have to destroy evil, and then a person can do good. For example, here we're not really even talking about outside evil. We're talking about inside evil. A person needs to change certain things about themselves. So first they have to do that, and then they can embrace the good. Or let's say someone who wants to do tshuva in a religious sense, and but isn't ready to let go of certain things that they're doing that are not exactly halachic. So first we say turn from evil and do good. But remember, the Baal Shem Tov said that's not always possible. It's not always possible to kick your addictions or to make fundamental changes. So he says sometimes turn from evil by doing good. That by giving focus to the good, it will give you the strength to eventually, little by little, to get rid of the evil. So, Bracha, this is what we were saying before. It's very, very fine line between when the klipa has to be completely destroyed and when it can be redeemed. Remember, we're actually taught when we say that we should love God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our might. B'chol levavcha. So heart is plural. The way it's written grammatically is plural. And so the Midrash says you should serve God with your Yetzer HaTov and your Yetzer Hara. So the question, well, I thought we're supposed to get rid of our Yetzer Hara. So here we are. But at the same time, here it's saying that some of the forces that are fueling our Yetzer Hara, when they can be turned around, they become the greatest benefit. When we can turn certain passions for evil into passions for good, so then that's how we serve God with our Yetzer Tov and our Yetzer Hara.
See, this is what. So may I say? So I read this from the Rebbe a long time ago, and it was a sikha from the Rebbe. Probably Toby, you'll know this, and also probably Nachum, if I'm saying this right. So, it was a sikha, and it said that, yes, the Rebbe was always pushing doing mitzvahs, obviously campaigns, do this, do that, like candles, put the tefillin on, even if somebody was not in the the greatest whatever space, whatever, or in their lives not the greatest space. So that for sure is what you're saying. But then the Rebbe was saying also there's another point. I don't think he was talking necessarily about evil. I think he was talking about sometimes, we just keep putting one thing on top of another, one thing and one, doing one thing and trying to do another thing and trying to do another thing. And he said, but sometimes you have to clean the basement. You have to go and you have to take the shovel and the axe and you have to do the work, because just adding another, layer on top of that, like they built the house here and we're like, wow, this house was like damaged. It was wet. It was rotting, and they just kept building. But the core of the house would just, hopefully it would be okay. The core of the house is not good. It's not a good foundation. So you have the foundation has to be raised.
So the whole idea is what we've been talking about all night. You have to pray for the clarity and the inspiration to know how to deal with these situations.
Can I jump in and say something?
Yes.
Okay. I hope Bracha will appreciate this. I just remember in many classes I was learning with Chabad, they would talk about, how therapy, psychology was practiced, during the 20th century, that it was, started with, I guess, psychoanalysis and digging into your past to find out, what went wrong, and like all of this emphasis on negativity that our Rebbeim, our teachers, always used to say that in Chabad the emphasis is on doing positive, and that if you do positive, then memela, that in a matter of course, automatically you'll be lifting yourself up and the negative things will start to fall by the wayside.
Right. That's exactly what the Baal Shem taught us.
Right. But there's a sikha from the Rebbe. And you probably have seen it. I don't know if you're remembering it now. Mamash, he talks about this. It was really crazy. I never saw such a sikha, but I remember reading it and thinking, wow, this is something that,
again, you have to know when to first turn from evil.
Yeah.
And you have to know when sometimes you have to do good, and that will give you the koach to get rid of the evil. It depends on the circumstance and the person, the stage of life, a million factors. Yes, Toby.
Yes, I just, this is reminding me of one of Rav Ginsburg's books, was originally called Tipul Shoresh. And what Baruch is talking about, it's like going in and cleaning out the basement, like with a tooth, you have to clean it out, go down in there and do a root canal or whatever it's called.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, that book was about how to rectify the state of Israel. And I'm just